Guys, I've managed to get some exclusive Season 1 Sorcerer gameplay. Here we go! Oh, I'm so excited! Hello, my fellow sorcerers! Season 1, Season of the Malignant is almost upon us, and so is the big pre-season patch on the 18th. That is either going to damn us to deeper depths of despair as we continue to struggle on the statistically weakest class in the game, or it is going to give us hope. It is going to give us something to look forward to, and a chance at a fix of some of the deep, fundamental, mechanical core design issues with this class. All of this said, I still, and always will, love Sorcerer as a class. I love the magic-y stuff in games like this in general, and I will stick by it and make it as best as it can be always, and then share that with you guys. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to, be perhaps a little bit more powerful, a little bit less squishy, have a few more, options like the other classes tend to do, and generally not feel like I'm playing with a broken leg. So on that front, what kind of things are we hoping for, expecting to see, and really need in this Season 1 patch in Season 1? Whether that comes from patch changes, or our new legendary aspects, our new unique, or the Malignant Heart effects that are for our class. However it comes to us, it does need to. Honestly, at this point, I would just take a Malignant Heart for Sorcerer that just says plus 5,000 armor. It's boring and clumsy, but it would do the job. So let's begin then. Well, look, you've heard my thoughts. I have made 2 separate 20-minute discussions on all of the issues with Sorcerer, and I don't want to just rehash them and then go, fix it. But at the same time, it's hard not to at least start there. The number one thing we need is a fix to squishiness. Every time you push above 55, 60 Nightmare Dungeon, you just enter this place of you cannot survive. But even before that, there is so many instances where you just get one shot through full health, through full barrier, that other classes just don't have to deal with. Because our elemental resist is broken, because we have the lowest armor in the game, the lowest health in the game, we're forced into very close range playstyles because of Arc Lash or Frost Nova if you're Ice Shards, and that puts, the squishiest class in danger. Glass Cannon means that we have to take even more damage if we want to at least do some damage, and generally there's a lot of problems there. Now obviously a Sorceress just have an extra 1,000 base armor or something would do it, but that doesn't feel very elegant and very much not likely. You've also got to realize that we have a compound issue coming up with Season 1 because the Malignant Hearts take up your jewelry, decoration slots, which means that we can't put skull gems in, which means we're losing a load of armor without any ability to get it back or any compensation. I really can't stress enough how much that's going to hurt our already dismal survivability in Malignant, and essentially we just need something. Either a retool of some Paragon board spaces, some base buffs, some aspect that really helps us keep alive, some definitive base class change that really does help us not die all the time. An easy way to do that would be, well, to go into my second point here, give the 3rd enchantment slot back. I would jump the joy if when I look at those patch notes soon, it just says, Sorcerers now have a 3rd enchantment slot, because then you could actually make some defensive decisions. Like, for example, actually taking the Flame Shield enchantment, which would genuinely help with the situation, but we're just too weak offensively to justify that when we need all the damage we can get to at least, kill things at half the speeds the other classes can kill things. And then that's at least a decision you can make, but with 2 enchantment slots and how little damage we do, we are forced to take things like Firebolt perpetually to get all of the various burning synergies, which we will get onto, and then we're forced to take another offensively useful one, either Teleport, either Ice Shards, or either Ball Lightning, depending on your build, and therein is another quite, well, issue. How often do you use the others? Yes, Fireball is amazing for leveling, but at least half the enchantment slots here just never see the light of day. Why is Incinerate a 8-second free Incinerate every 18 seconds? This thing barely even targets correctly, and Incinerate itself is arguably our weakest skill. In fact, I think it probably is. And then you get a free one just a little bit? Like, it's baffling why this is the way that it is. If this was just when you cast Incinerate, a second Incinerate is also cast passively from a serpent next to you, so you get double Incinerate, that would be really neat. Something like that might save the move, but in any case, I digress. Some of the weaker enchantment slots definitely need a bump in both their mechanical functionality and their damage, so there's actual competition here. We suffer from the issue of this just being so good, and everything else being so weak, that there's really no decisions to make when it comes to our otherwise really cool and interesting class unique mechanic. And things like maybe we unnerf Ice Blades based on a level 25 beta, that would also go a long way to read that in the patch notes. Now, that said, I do want to now talk about the Firebolt enchantment. This is a problem. It's not a problem because it's too weak, it's a problem because it's too strong. And even though with it we're still not strong compared to the classes, without it we are too weak to do anything, and it's kind of a joke. When you put this Firebolt enchantment in, it reads as thus: you now do 30% more crit damage. You now do, what is it, like 35, 55, 65, 70% more damage. You take a load less damage. So how can you ever justify not using that? At any point. Ever. It's ridiculous. I genuinely think that Devouring Blaze needs to be nerfed to only affect fire skills, but ice and shock skills are buffed to compensate, and then fire in general just needs a huge tune-up. Burning as a factor just isn't viable, possible, anything, and damage over time needs a retweak, but there's nothing really to dive into there. It just needs to be better. It needs to be more damage, and it needs to burn faster. But knowing that, how can you ever not take this enchantment? So getting a third slot would at least mean we have two choices to make, which really helps things, and we can do some interesting synergies. The other issue, though, is with a third slot, then we have Frostbolt, where direct damage now applies chill. And while chill is not as good as burning, because it doesn't affect bosses, it does kind of mean if this ever got nerfed, we probably would just be using Frostbolt, because then we can go to the chill board and then start doing more damage to chilled enemies, which, while nowhere near as good as burning, is probably still the next best thing, so that's the danger here. The whole system itself is kind of fraught with these inbuilt default best choices, which take away from the whole idea of it, so in my mind, we just need essentially a rebalance of the enchantment slots to make them actually compelling as decisions you need to make. This needs to be weaker, everything else needs to be stronger, and we need a third slot. With that going forward, it solves so many fundamental issues that we need solving. It might not be an elegant solution, it might not fix the class at its core, but it is a quick solution that works. We can solve squishiness with the Flame Shield enchantment. We can solve it with the Ice Armor enchantment. Maybe, God forbid, actually put a defensive enchantment slot in. And I will never stop campaigning for this. I don't think there is a better way in one easy fell swoop to give Sorcerer the bump it needs than to just add a third enchantment slot. If literally no other changes were present, the patch just had one line of text for Sorcerer, and it was third enchantment slot. That is the most significant difference we could have. And while it's not enough, it at least goes a long way to papering the cracks until a more permanent rework, fix, redesign, and addressing of some of the core mechanical issues with the class in Season 2, in Season 3, etc. When they get round to it, as we know their timescale is fairly slow. Resistance's waiting until Season 2 is honestly really disappointing. Past that, I think mana issues, while they exist, do get solved in the end game, where you end up with infinite mana, And I think that's fine. I think while leveling you don't need infinite mana, it is nice to use multiple abilities. 1 to 50 as a sorcerer is more fun than any other class, and probably better than any other class, because you can just use everything and it works and it kills, and you have lots of variety and choice. You can just use your favorite spells, and yes, that does apply to other classes, but I think sorcerer really shines before the min-max endgame, and I think, you know, that's okay. Don't get me wrong, mana is an issue, but I think it's low down the list of priority when it comes to fixing the class in general. Then we kind of need to talk about the unique items, because they just need a huge rebalancing. I didn't want this to devolve into just give us more numbers, because as I said in the talks, that doesn't really solve anything. Even if we did like bone spear level damage, there would still be so many issues with the class that prevent it being fun in the way that it should, working in the way that it should. And the Gloves of the Illuminator are the perfect example. Sorcerer needs less of these, you get this, but at the cost of this, that the other classes just don't have anywhere near as much. What is the point of Fireball bouncing if it does 65% less damage? Like, it makes me, annoys me. It really annoys me. Because you read that and you go, okay, so I need to hit the enemy 3 times with each fireball to do as much damage as just hitting them. And you might say, oh yeah, but you're gaining the ability for each fireball to hit multiple groups, to pierce, etc. Sure, but that doesn't make up for a over 2/3 loss in damage on average, depending on what roll you get. It just doesn't. This unique might as well not exist, and because of that it hurts Fireball as a concept when Fireball itself is already too weak to be a properly viable concept. So this kinda you lose to gain needs to stop being so prevalent on Sorcerer, and the uniques themselves just need a tune-up. The fact this is a 10% chance to collect Crackling Energy is just a joke. It really is. This would need to happen all the time, and even then it's not worth giving up the powerful affixes and the 1.5 times power legendary aspect on the necklace. Hell, if it meant the other uniques actually get usably buffed, I would take a Raiment nerf just so we're not forcibly using it in every single build. Every build, Teleport, AoE Stun, Frost Nova. Every build, every spell, every playstyle, no matter whether you're Frost, you're Fire, you're Dot, you are Shock, Teleport, Stun, Frost Nova, over and over and over again. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I love this unique, I love the effect. They knocked it out the park with this. It's the best item Sorcerer has. But there needs to be more than one of those. There really does. And while it doesn't need nerfing, it shouldn't get nerfed. It's just an example of how good it can be that just doesn't apply to essentially every other unique. And as I touched on there, any way to decouple the requirement to take all 4 defensive skills would be ideal, because they're just all so good. We need a reason to have more than one attack on our bars. They need to do more than just to do damage. Yes, you've got stuff like Spark that can summon a Crackling Energy, or it can just increase your crit chance. But 2% for 5 seconds, and you need to do it 4 times to get that, and only for 5 seconds? If this said increases your crit chance by 10% for 10 seconds, then you would maybe consider Spark. You would cast the 1 Spark and then start using the actual ability you're dealing damage with. Kind of like Necros do in Bone Spear by still using a basic attack for crit chance. There needs to be more effects other than damage coming from these moves. If Frozen Orb just said makes everyone it passes through vulnerable for 2 seconds, then we could justify putting it on our bars to have a better ranged way of applying vulnerable, and then maybe we don't have to use Frost Nova constantly and we can have other choices. And vulnerable there really is something I want to touch on. More moves need more ways to apply vulnerable. If Incinerate after channeling for 2 seconds made enemies vulnerable until you stop channeling, that would save the move by itself, and you could do something fun there. We just need less close range, grouped up, Frost Nova or nothing in this quartet of constantly required chosen defensives, and you get that by making the other skills more appealing. Mastery needs to not just be core skills version 2. The mastery skills should do something extra that you want the effects for more than the damage. If Firewall made people vulnerable, and vulnerable is the easy example, but you can see where I'm going with here, that would be perfect. And if there is like a Malignant Heart in Season 1 that says Firewall or burning damage makes enemies vulnerable after 1 second, then we can work actual burning spells into the build. Burning maybe not the best example, because then it would just come from Fireball, but you know what I'm saying, it could just specify non-basic. In any case, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. And in terms of a new unique, I would absolutely love to see. It's something that could get slapped onto Escadores, and I've brought it up a couple times, but just give us a unique that attracts crackling energy to you, and then you could do a proper crackling energy build. As it stands, running around and collecting it slows you down so much that even if it did so much damage, you'd still be slower than using a different build. You need a sort of auto-collection method to make it happen, and gaining that effect would be massive, and it's my most requested new unique or legendary aspect on Malignant Heart, if that is something that can happen. Past that, there is, of course, just, yes, give us a general damage increase. It's really needed, especially if the squishiness aspect isn't going to be looked at. A few percents aren't going to cut it, and we need some deep increases on the core skills, on the mastery skills that make them genuinely worthwhile using. And an easy one too is just, hey, maybe less literally unfunctional and broken things, like the Winter Glyph, which just doesn't have a place to go on the entirety of your Paragon boards because it cannot reach any cold damage and damage reduction modifiers. It's just so weird that this exists when there isn't a Paragon board that can support it. It's such a waste. It really, really is. Then after all that, which I think are fair enough, possible, doable, and would go a long way, third enchantment slot, make us harder to kill, a bit more damage, some uniques that are less useless, you know, just kinda a few little general things that everyone can obviously see we desperately need as sorcerers to keep up with the other classes and to not get hard-walled by the end game. In any case, the basic skills are kind of fine. I think they need to be a bit more potent in their secondary effects to actually make them worth considering alongside just spamming a core skill with infinite mana. Clash, obviously specifically fine as it's the core of the joint best build, but they just need a little bit of an extra effect, and mana kind of isn't it. If this got buffed to like 10 mana or something, so you could spam out your spells, throw one firebolt, get 50 mana back, you know, that's the kind of level it would need to be, but they are basic skills, so it's, you know, kind of fine. When we get to our core skills then, this is where there's a lot of things that need addressing. Ice Shards, obviously, it's fine, that doesn't need changing. Literally the other 5, though, oh, Fireball feels great, it's fun to cast, it looks impactful, it just needs to do more damage, it's as simple as that. Frozen Orb needs to mechanically work different. It needs to stop when it reaches an enemy, not always go the set distance. The enchantment version stops when it reaches an enemy, so why doesn't the cast version? That little mechanical tweak would make this suddenly very, very worth using, along with tiny bits of damage, but it would make it a compelling option. Chain Lightning simply just needs to be able to bounce between more targets. It needs like at least 10, maybe 15, and then you would have a really cool Chain Lightning build with all the Chain Lightning aspects, but only 5 is really limiting. Especially when it can bounce between you, it could become a really fun tool, especially for killing bosses with the bouncing off you and getting more damage, and it's just weird that it's capped to 5. Everyone else's core skills can just hit as many people as it needs to, depending on how it mechanically works, of course. Charge Bolts is actually pretty solid in how it works, it just needs to do a bit more damage. The defensives we've talked about. Conjuration, Conjuration. They all need to do massively more damage, and this is the one area where numbers is the way. They just need to hit harder. Lightning Spear needs to last longer, but how they mechanically work is great. They're just too weak. Numbers need up on Conjuration. When it comes to Mastery, again, as I touched on, they just need more interesting secondary effects, or what they support needs to be stronger. If Crackling Energy was stronger, then you would work in Ball Lightning. And yes, it's part of our class, you can have a dedicated Ball Lightning build, but if Crackling Energy by itself was a build, that makes Ball Lightning quite good. Burning damage just needs to be better as a way of killing things, it needs to be faster ticking, and it needs to hit harder, and then Firewall is suddenly worth using again. Meteor is admittedly fine, and Blizzard again is fine because of the aspect, but Blizzard itself is really quite weak. It just happens to have that really good Ice Spikes aspect to it, so I think it needs to be a bit more front-loaded in how it operates. The ultimates, in fairness, are all quite good, and they don't really need too much changing. They're all very solid in their own right, in their own situation, and they all do get used. Avalanche is great. Shatter is great, Overflowing Energy is great, Via's Mastery I think could be a little bit better, or maybe, hey, actually add the aspect that buffs Via's Mastery. Did you guys know that? There is an aspect in the game files that makes Via's Mastery stronger, massively stronger, like triple or something. It's just not in game because no one has got it. So I'm hoping that will get added in Season 1, and then this actually becomes a proper consideration versus just Overflowing Energy and dippling into Crackling Energy. SC's Ferocity is fairly good, though it could do with being a little bit stronger. And then finally Combustion, as I get killed by a... What is happening? Oh god, no, I'm a sorcerer with all of the core skills except the good one. I can never kill them. Run! Anyway, Combustion just needs to be better. It needs to be... There needs to be another thing you gain from having multiple burning effects, like less damage taken or more healing. And I think playing into the healing aspect of fire, actually having this warmth but from more places, and making it perhaps this tanky setup. So yes, you can go full burning. You might do less damage or kill things slower than ice or shock, but you're much harder to kill. You heal. Maybe you have some fortify aspects to fire. That would be really cool, and it could be supported by a better, more robust Combustion that has a secondary effect other than just a bit more burny. There has to be some other gain from burning damage, because you will never choose slowly killing something with a dot over just blasting it down with upfront damage, so it needs to be more than just damage. So, there you go. That's kind of a little look at what I want to get out of Season 1. And again, whether it comes from the patch, the new unique, the new legendary aspects, the new malignant heart effects, it needs to be something. We have to get something more than just, some of your skills do more damage now, have fun. I have to believe they're not blind to the suffering of sorcerers, and there will be some other than damage buffs, mechanical compensation changes to actually alleviate the issues. So that's what I want to see, that's what I think is reasonable, and I would love to know your thoughts on it all too. For now then, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.